Hello and welcome to CellarPassTV. We are live here in the Red Room at Raymond Vineyards, and today we have Randall Graham from the legendary Bonnie Doon Vineyard. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have these awesome bottles. They're tucked down here. And we are going to be starting with Le Cigar Volant.
Correct.
Ooh, okay, well, my French is terrible.
Pardon your French.
Pardon my French. Tell us a little bit about this one.
This is our flagship wine. This is a wine we've been making since 1984. It's a Rhone-ish blend made from Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, and Cinsault. And its name derives from the rather bizarre ordinance on the books in Châteauneuf-du-Pape since 1954, which explicitly prohibits the landing of flying saucers and flying cigars in the vineyards.
Very good rules to have.
This is very important. This is very important. Anyways, when I first read about this thing, I thought, these people are completely nuts. But what a wonderful potential story and way of thinking about wine and aliens and things like that.
Very progressive of them, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, maybe you'd see this in Berkeley, perhaps.
Well, shall we sample this one?
Sure, with pleasure.
Yay.
So note, it's bottled en screw cap.
I love it. I love the little
we
alien
love
on the
caps.
top, too.
Yeah.
Nice touch. It's adorable.
Alienation.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Sorry about the delays. As you can tell, we don't have our normal table. Nothing is normal about today. I know our team is ready to celebrate. It's Wine Wednesday. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Piacere.
That is delicious. Truly, truly delicious. So we were chatting earlier a little bit about the history of Bonnie Doon and when you decided to come into the wine business in the 80s. So tell us a little bit about your inspiration and how you landed in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Hopefully not by spaceship.
Nothing. Well, sometimes I think I did. I had the fortune to work in a wine shop in the mid-70s, right after I finished college. And from there, I loved selling wine. I loved tasting wine. I was privileged to taste the most extraordinary wines in the world, really amazing wines. That was my introduction. And I thought, to myself, how will I ever be able to drink these wines on a regular basis unless I learn how to make wines of this quality myself? Of course, I never have quite figured out how to make wines of that caliber, but we're getting closer. Anyways, I went back to school. I went to Davis and studied winemaking and grape growing.
What was your studies before you?
I studied literature and philosophy, which actually has served me very, very well.
I bet it has. Indeed. So you went back to school, became a winemaker.
Yeah. My folks helped me out. They were very gracious, and we bought some land in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the eponymous Bonnie Doon area, and started that in 1981.
Very cool. And
the rest is history.
The rest is history. What was your first vintage? Assuming it wasn't in 81, but
first vintage was 81.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Well, it was from purchased grapes.
But you went, but sometimes there's always a little bit of a delay.
Well, actually, I planted the vineyard a couple of years earlier. But we made, actually, ironically enough, we made Cabernet. We made a Bordeaux blend in '83 from the vineyard, which was sensational. Go figure. I mean, unfortunately, I probably should have kept it, but Bonnie Doon is officially an anti-Cabernet zone, Cabernet-free winery. So
Cabernet and Chardonnay free.
Cabernet and Chardonnay free. We made Chardonnay in those days also from the vineyard. That was splendid, but I stopped that in 1990. So there's been no Chardonnay since then.
And your branding has always been very captivating, at least for us. I've been a follower for a while, and the funny names and tongue-in-cheekness about it all.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's been too clever by half, and I don't know that the wineries, the brands or the wines themselves are taken as seriously as they could be or should be, because there's a lot of thought that goes into the winemaking.
Absolutely.
Which maybe is the branding itself may be a little distracting, perhaps.
I hope not, because I've always loved the branding, and there's very serious wines behind those bottles. I know we in our collection, I believe we have, it's one of your quartz, I believe, is the booty call.
Bouteille call.
Bouteille call. Sorry,
Bouteille
but
call,
again,
please.
French is terrible. But I love that wine.
That's an amazing label, I have to say.
No,
I
that
think the
one's
label's more
favorite.
amazing than the wine, but
Definitely a lot of fun. So when you're not learning and reading and philosophizing and making wine, what are your hobbies?
there are no. I mean, I read and I write and I do crossword puzzles and I hang out with my daughter and cook sometimes, eat sometimes. There's really, the wine business
Just
is all consuming. It's pretty all consuming. So I'm a little bit like Peter Sellers in the sense that I'm extremely interesting as a winemaker, but as a human being, like zero. Have no other personality. Really can do very little. Talk about very little else. It's really kind
Just
of
keep you
tragic.
and your wine.
Yeah, just keep the conversation about wine, and we'll be fine.
We got some questions coming in regarding label transparency. What was your motivation, and how has it been accepted?
Good question. It's my motivation. As Dr. Freud tells us, there's no such thing as a single motivation. We're motivated by many factors. So part of it was the altruistic desire to do the right thing because it truly is the right thing. It's a good thing for the industry to be transparent about what you put in your wine. Secondly, to sort of brag about my virtue. Of course, that's the less honorable motive. But it's really kind of an incentive to myself to be more rigorous as a winemaker. If you write down, you indicate everything that you put in the wine on the label transparently, you will think twice or three times before you make any particular addition. So it makes you a more careful winemaker and makes you a better winemaker.
A little bit more honest of a winemaker, I would say.
Maybe I don't. It's not. I can't dictate this for everyone. This is for me. This is important for me, and it would be a beautiful thing if other people adopted it. So far, Shin Vineyards in New York State has, and Ridge most recently has adopted ingredient labeling, and the rest of the world is kind of being very quiet about their.
Right, there's grapes in there.
Yes.
That's all you need to know. Brilliant. What so much attracted you to the Santa Cruz Mountains? Why was that the region of choice?
Well, I went to school in Santa Cruz at UC Santa Cruz, which we called Banana Slug, Uncle Charlie's summer camp. And
I love it.
And I was actually attracted pretty much to a misunderstanding. I thought I was going to make the great Pinot Noir, the great American Pinot Noir in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And Santa Cruz Mountains is still a wonderful place to grow grapes, but for me, Pinot Noir was not meant to be. Sadly. Well,
not really. I mean, it all works out, right?
It all does work out, yes.
And so you're saying you're Cabernet free, you're Chardonnay free. We were speaking earlier that your top selling wine by chance is a rosé or your Vin Gris.
Actually, Vin Gris. It's ironic. As I said, I want to be known as a really serious winemaker, and it's my pink wine that is appreciated. But this history is filled with these sorts of ironies.
It's funny that way. Being that I am not 100% skilled in my wine speak, but I'm getting there, what is the notable difference between a rosé and Vin Gris?
Right. Superficially, they resemble each other. They're a little bit different, though. Typically, rosé is made as a byproduct of red wine production, where it spends more time on the skins and the juices bled out of the tank. Whereas a Vin Gris is made often, from dedicated grapes specifically for the Vin Gris and spends little residence on the skins. So it's much paler in color. It is generally not as alcoholic. It's more discreet. It's more subtle. It's more like a white wine.
Okay.
It's not as fruity, not as candied, not as confected.
More the essence of.
Well, it's more elegant. It's not as. It doesn't sort of hit you over the head with fragrance. It's a very subtle perfume rather than a flagrant perfume.
And we're getting more questions. What do you think makes this bottle stand out most amongst its peers in this category?
Cigar Volant. Good question. Thank you. Well, it's very interesting question. It's a deep question. When you make wine, I mean, like, there are many stylistic forks in the road, but I think one of the primary forks in the road or dichotomies is, do you do something really showy, really exaggerated, really over the top, or do you do something that is more subtle and elegant? Now, subtle and elegant sometimes is taken to mean wimpy and gutless and insipid or weak. Not necessarily, in fact. Sometimes elegant and complex. Sometimes it means elegant and complex. So I really like wines that are more subtle, that are lower in alcohol, a little higher in acidity, that are not over extracted. These are food wines.
Right.
You can actually drink them and enjoy them and not tire. You don't want a wine that will tire your palate and tire your psyche and your spirit.
True. What's to enhance and enjoy, otherwise it kind of shakes you up a little too much. You're like, ooh, what was in my glass?
Well, or more to the point, one glass basta. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
You're done.
You want to be able to enjoy this for an evening, not just
Yeah.
one hit wonder.
Correct.
We've got In a Fabulous World's chiming in, saying hello and happy Wine Wednesday. Cheers, Maxine. My Vine Spot's asking, having used both natural and synthetic cork, what made you go with the rotating closures or
Screw
caps?
caps. Well, honestly, to be perfectly honest, I love the aesthetic of corks. I think corks are beautiful, they're cool, they're natural, they're wonderful. But they weren't always that way, and still there's some big problems with corks. Corks were really dreadful 15 years ago. They were so bad that I went in the direction of synthetic closures because the corks were insufferable. Now, the synthetic closures were not the answer either. In fact, they were actually worse than corks, or in
really?
a different way. They had other problems. But the main problem with synthetic closures that I found was the wines aged prematurely. So perhaps if you're making a wine that was going to be consumed within 2 or 3 years, it was not a big drama. But if you're making a vin de garde like Cigare Volant, it's very problematic. So I'd sort of painted myself.
Was it letting too much oxygen in, or what was
Well,
it?
I don't think it was letting too much oxygen in. I think there's something in the material itself that in the outgassing of the plastic. By the way, there's no such thing as an inert plastic. It doesn't exist. So all plastics react a little bit. The synthetic closures probably reacted more than they should. So I think they released some kind of oxidizing element into the wine, which hastened the development of the oxidation of the wine. Screw caps were a bit of a leap of faith, but they'd been around forever, for a long time, and there was actually quite a bit of data on their performance. And the only issue with screw caps at the time seemed to be the fact that the commercial non-acceptance. In other words, people imagine railroad tracks, down on your luck, just got paroled, or just all the associations that you would think of with screw caps. But technically, they were known to be a very fine closure. So I thought, well, this is an opportunity. And all my colleagues had said, we have to test this first, Randall. We have to do focus groups, and we have to do this and that. I said, to heck with that. We're not going to do that.
Somebody needs to be the first.
Somebody needs to be the first. There's an opportunity. Let's do it. And let's do it big. Let's not do it quietly. Let's do it big. And we did. And it was a big success.
And it's worked out very well.
It's worked out.
And on to that note, screw caps for the consumer are great because you don't need any tools. Your hands.
Correct.
You open and go.
Correct.
I love the cork. I love the sound of the cork pulling. There's a romance about it as well, and kind of a ceremonial element. But at the same time, I know in our household that a screw cap is just as welcome. And
there's a lot of misunderstanding about screw caps. One of the misunderstandings is that the belief that wine does not age in screw cap. It does age. It's a little bit of a different evolution. It's more backward when it's young, and maybe it's not as forthcoming as an experience. However, wines will actually live. This is completely true. Wines will live much longer with a screw cap closure than they will with a cork. It's a different evolution. They're slower from the starting gate, but they'll go go the distance.
That's good to know, actually. So if you do have a wine you love and cherish, a screw cap would probably be a good one to be looking for. And I know there's several brands now, as we've all seen. They're starting to kind of even dabble. Where they do like half their bottling screw cap, half in cork, and I don't understand that myself.
You pick one.
Yeah, you go with it. You're either going with it or you're not. But I think it's fabulous, and cheers
thanks.
to you for taking a chance
Cheers.
on an unknown closure and
Well,
making
no,
it work.
was known.
Getting knowing.
The unknown bit was the commercial acceptance.
Right.
Because the other thing to remember is back then, you couldn't pick up a wine magazine or a newspaper with a wine column where the wine writers were just at their wits' end about corks. I mean, sommeliers were tearing their hair out. Wine writers were just saying corks are a disaster.
Oh, I hear you. And it's so funny. There were a few brands, they shall remain nameless, but clearly had a series of bad cork for a long time, where we used to joke that we had the opening kit, which included a chopstick, a strainer, and the corkscrew, because inevitably it was going to disintegrate and collapse, and you'd have to punch it through and then strain out the cork.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So those were the survival kits of opening wine. So, well, cheers. I think that's fabulous. We do have some more questions coming through.
So is it legitimate to charge a corkage fee if it's a screw cap?
Ah, yes.
We charge a screwage fee.
A screwage fee. I love it. Oh, dear. Are there any grape varieties you haven't worked with yet that you would like to?
Oh my gosh, I'd like to work with them all. I love them all. Not all of them, but if it's an obscure Italian grape, I'm all over it, or at least historically have been all over it. It leads to, that's a deep question. It's a deceptively simple question. But one of the things I ask myself, not quite every day, but almost every day, is really, what the heck are we doing in the new world? What is our job in the new world? Is our job simply to copy the old world and try to do a credible imitation? I don't think so. That's boring and banal and beside the point. I think our job is to figure out what we can do that's absolutely radically new and different and distinctive, that makes a statement that enriches the world, that's not just simply a pallid imitation of the old world. That should be our meditation every day. Now, it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to do that.
Right.
But I'm thinking about how one might do that.
And how are you doing that?
Well, at the moment, I'm not. To be totally honest, it's really hard. It takes time and money, and mostly time and money.
Mostly those two things.
And insight and intuition and luck and karma and God knows what else.
Gumption.
I mean, I think you can do it. I mean, some of the ideas I have, I think dry farming is really important. Farming without irrigation, that's kind of a basic. But I think possibly the idea of polyculture, or the idea of a extremely heterogeneous vineyard where you've got a lot of genetic variation in the vineyard, I think that's a real potential for creating real complexity and for allowing other elements to emerge from the vineyard, not just simply the varietal characteristics, potentially the soil characteristics, which makes potentially a much more interesting wine.
Well, that, and you add in, the subject that nobody likes to talk about, or maybe you do like to talk about it, but climate change and
Yep.
the sustainability of vineyards in the future.
Correct.
What are our growing regions going to look like?
Correct.
Do we need to adapt our varietals in a way to sustain?
We should be looking at grapes that have really good drought potential. We should be looking at rootstocks that have really good drought potential. And we should be looking at ways of farming that are not so input intensive, specifically water, that just don't require a lot of water.
Makes sense to me. We should probably move on to contestant
Sure.
number 2.
Oopsie.
That's all right. It's not the first time that's happened. All right, I will let you do the honors.
Okay,
I
great.
love the red stripe on the bottle. It's not a stripe. It is the tractor beam coming from the spaceship. I adore that to no end. And so this is the 09, you could say it's Cigar Volant.
This is our 09 Cigar Volant Reserve Bonbon. And this is the companion to the Cigar Volant Normale, if you will, but it's aged in a different way. It experiences a different élevage. or upbringing in the cellar. And normally with Cigar Volant, we age the wine for usually 2 years in a mixture of puncheons, which are 500-liter barrels, and 10,000-liter wood upright tanks. We don't move the wine, we don't rack it, we let it sort of sit and do its thing. So it's a fairly anaerobic, reductive élevage, if you will. However, with the reserve, we go a different route, and instead of putting it in barrel and wood, we put it in glass, in 5-gallon glass carboys or demijohns, and seal it up tight so there's no oxygen exchange on its lees, and then we do batonnage, stirring of the bottles magnetically with a little magnetic stir bar inside of each bottle.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very cool. It's beyond cool.
I want to see this. I'm
beyond
going to
cool.
come see you.
It's beyond cool.
This is very cool. This is a delicious wine.
So a reductive élevage is something that's misunderstood. The word reduction itself is misunderstood. It generally sometimes connotes off odors, sulfides, rotten eggs, onion flavored tar, kind of bad flavors. But a certain amount of reduction in the process of the wine, and even in the expression of the wine itself, is essentially a way of enhancing the life force of the wine. It's chi. It's charging the batteries. So it's literally charging the batteries. It's allowing electrons to get stored in the wine, and so they kind of refresh all the other elements of the antioxidative system of the wine, the anthocyanins and tannins and things like that. So it's a way, you think of it as the battery or the capacitor of the wine that allows it to kind of keep going and going and going and resist oxidation.
Very
It's kind of like the Energizer Bunny.
It's the Energizer Bunny. There's little bunnies and they're going boom, 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 boom. The 08, the Cigar Volant, complex and engaging and well-structured and long-lived. Well, thank you so much. That's great feedback on the first wine. And Demi Love stated thank you for asking her question, his question. Of course, absolutely. It's what we're here for. I'm actually kind of falling in love with the 09, though.
This wine is off the hook.
It's pretty
good
stuff.
Off the hook. Note, not available in stores yet. We sell this to our wine club members, the Dune Club Distinctive Esoteric Wine Network. And we also have something called the Club Bonbon. So you can sign up to reserve some bottles or a case or a half case, like a cigar box full of this wine in the white as well.
Oh, very nice.
So it's very special wine. It's not inexpensive, this wine.
I wouldn't imagine so. It shouldn't be. This is a precious gem of a wine for sure. But you can join their clubs, and you can do that on their website or contacting them.
BonnieDuneVineyard.com or call the winery.
Wonderful. And we were talking earlier about the tasting room opening soonish.
Yes, quite soonish, 2 weeks-ish, in Davenport, California, which is right on Highway 1, not more than 3 miles from Bonnie Doon,
Nice.
or where we started.
Lovely location.
Yeah.
I like it. So, what do you like most about that town?
Davenport, it's artsy. It's a little windy, I have to say. The wind kind of pretty blustery.
Ponytail weather.
Ponytail weather. But there's kind of an eccentric community there. It's a lot of, as I said, a lot of artists. They care, and it's lovely. I mean, it's really literally right on Highway 1, so there's a beautiful view of the ocean. Whales come by. It's a lovely place to stop and taste some wine.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Well, we can't wait to check it out. I know you guys are new to CellarPass, and we're excited to have you, and can't wait to have the tasting room on board as well. So
Thank you.
stay tuned on CellarPass and BonnieDuneVineyard.com. Yes, and you can find out how to book, and you can book now, and you can book later, and just book. So on this one, what is the price point for the 09?
You know, this is embarrassing. I think it's $75, but I'm not totally sure. It's either 75 or 80, but somewhere in that range.
That seems
in
about
the rarefied. No, I think 75.
75. That's a very fair
Don't
price.
quote me on that.
I
though.
won't, but that's a good general price point. is what I would expect.
This is a very labor-intensive wine to make.
It sounds like
It's
it.
very labor-intensive. Anyways,
But I want to come see the stirring of the wine.
Yeah,
You have me intrigued on that,
Yeah.
actually. I like this. We are going to be moving into Le Cigar Blanc.
I don't want to.
We don't have to yet.
I don't want to discard this.
Okay,
I mean,
then
this
let's
is-
hang. We're going to hang. We're not moving on yet. We're going to wait.
Are there any more questions?
They're starting to filter in. I think they are savoring at the moment. And,
We're just extemporizing because I don't want to pour this out.
No, we're not going to pour this out, but
Although
yeah,
I do have to drive back to Oakley, California tonight, so
you can take your time.
I
We won't get you on the road quite so quickly.
gotta go a little easy here.
Absolutely. So some of the things that our viewers and our bloggers like to hear about are food pairings.
Yes.
What are some of your favorites with this particular wine?
Well, honestly, I don't yet know this wine all that well.
You're still dating?
We're still dating, but the Cigar Normale I know inside out.
Well, let's talk about that.
Having made it for many years now. Cigar Volant is a wine that is not terribly tannic. It has some tannin, but it doesn't have the same structure as a Cabernet Sauvignon, for example. So you don't want to serve it necessarily with a steak, something that's got really dense structure. Meats that are stewed or braised lamb, braised pork, pork shoulder, ribs, and then game is also brilliant. Game is utterly brilliant. Venison. When I first started in the business many years ago, and I took my first or second East Coast trip, and I was seeing 7 cities in 7 days, or 9 cities in 9 days, whatever the heck it was. Nobody had ever heard of Cigar Volant. Nobody had ever seen it, tasted it, knew nothing about it. Nobody knew anything about Rhone wines in the day either. So the chefs, we do a lot of winemaker dinners. The chefs would say, "So, what goes with Cigar Volant? I mean, what do I pair it with?" And I would typically say, "Well, you can pair it with venison or something like that." Anyways, the first trip I had venison lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner for maybe 10 days.
Whoops.
Whoopsie.
They-
goes
it-
great with venison, but
and other things too.
and other things too. But I don't think I was able to eat venison for another 10 years after that.
You had your fill.
Yes.
Well, they were probably excited too, because venison isn't necessarily a staple on many menus. So it'll probably give them opportunity, and each chef being like, "Venison, that's brilliant! That's awesome."
You know that kangaroo, you can call kangaroo venison as well. Venison actually has a larger meaning besides.
I was not aware.
And this wine does go very well with kangaroo.
Kangaroo. Ostrich, I'd imagine as
Ostrich, yeah. And things that are a little gamey. Game birds, very nice. Quail, lovely with
Ooh.
quail.
well. That'd be delicious.
Yeah.
So it's nice and versatile in that sense that you can play with some different flavor profiles. And but it is, I can tell how this will be very delicious with the food.
Now this
one
one
in particular.
but this one though is very umami intensive, very umami intensive, savory, and because it is so savory, this wine actually is a more challenging wine to pair with food than the Cigar Normale. The Cigar Normale is kind of like a golden retriever of a wine. It's just happy to be there.
Just put me on the table.
Just put me
I'm
on
fine.
the table, I'm fine. This is a little more of a kind of French poodle, a little more high strung. And I think this wine probably would go better with simpler dishes, maybe just some cheese or just a very simple preparation, nothing
Nothing too
terrible.
fancy.
Yeah.
Like a simple pasta with a light meat of some sort in there, maybe. If even that.
Or just on its own.
Yeah.
I think it's almost, you can think of it as a meditation wine.
A book and a fire and
Yes.
maybe a piece of cheese. It is delicious. Oh, must ask a music question.
Oh,
Do you
dear.
also enjoy space rock like 1970s group Hawkwind?
Have never heard of Hawkwind, but I'm sure they're great. Musically, I'm slightly retarded. I stopped with Frank Zappa, but which is not a bad place to stop.
It's all good. What kind of music do you listen to? Subconsciously or consciously?
I listen to a lot of Zappa still. Jazz and classical and then old rock and roll if it comes on the radio. I do a lot of driving in my car, so I have an opportunity to listen to a lot of music.
You kind of victim to the stations as they come in and out. Let's see. Oh, going to the price point, we're getting $65 on site. I'm like, okay.
Well, I think that might be for the
For
the 08
for the
reserve.
normal.
For the 08
08
reserve.
reserve,
I think
okay.
the 09 we're taking a price bump.
Are we?
I think we're bumping it at
Excellent.
$10. So there.
That's no problem. What is your favorite wine moment as a winemaker thus far?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough. That's sort of like at the end of a Woody Allen movie. It's like, so, like, what does life mean? You know, is it love? Is it death? Is it what does it mean? I don't know.
Finding meaning in a Woody Allen movie.
Well, no, in the earlier, but most important moment. I mean, you get satisfaction in different ways. I mean, when you like any artist, the satisfaction is in the doing. After it's done, it's done. You're done with it, and it's time for the next thing. So for me, the real satisfaction is tackling new projects and new problems, and thinking about it kind of in a different way. That's what's exciting to me in the wine biz.
Very nice. Getting some commentary on the reversal of wine order. They are finding it very interesting that we are going from red to white. Could we elaborate on the reason?
Sure. You know, if you ever are drinking a really powerful, complex white, generally speaking, most of the time, in my experience, it's better to drink that white after the reds rather than before the reds. For the simple reason that your palate is not quite ready for the white, and when you've drunk a bunch of red wine, your palate has become acclimated, and then you can simply to tannin, to kind of this salt, and then you can just simply relax into the white wine and just kind of let it. So it's sort of like the crest of the hill and sort of coming back down the mountain, if you will. That's,
I like it. I've often found myself actually starting with reds and then returning to whites, and everyone looks at me a little strange, and I'm like, it works for me. So I was thrilled, and you said let's bring the white in last. So I'm excited, and I know we're coming down to our last sips, and I see Bonnie Doon Vineyard has chimed in on the price point. You're right, and the 08 reserve was $65, and the 09 it looks like it's going to be $75, and it's going out especially to the Dune Club members in September. So join now.
Join now.
Join now and get your 09. It'll be fabulous.
We should also, I don't know if there's an opportunity to show the box, but if you buy 6 bottles of Cigar Reserve.
It's a beautiful box. It's currently holding the camera right now.
You can't show it, but so, it's a beautiful cigar box.
We will definitely try to get a clip of the box at the end here in all of its awkwardness, but it is beautiful. I love it, and I definitely love the history and how you've kind of played on the rules and creating a line of wine behind it. But no flying cigars.
I'm ready if they'll have me.
Yes. And we can switch out. Switching glasses.
Okay, great. Gotcha. Thank you.
We are on to the Cigar Blanc, or just Cigar Blanc.
Cigar Blanc. 2011 Cigar Blanc.
Beautiful. Thank you.
This is a blend of Grenache Blanc and Roussanne from a single vineyard, the Beeswax Vineyard in the Arroyo Seco of Monterey County.
Beeswax Vineyard.
Named, actually, amazingly, synchronistically, because I don't think the owners of the vineyard had any sense that Roussanne smelled like beeswax, but Roussanne does smell like beeswax. Grenache Blanc too sometimes. And the wine often has a beeswax character. It has beeswax and then pome fruits, pear and quince. And the 11 is such a cool wine. This wine knocks me out. It has a odd quality of citrus, almost like the citrus rind. And when you taste it, you can taste a little bit of the astringency of the citrus rind, as well as a wonderful stoniness to it, like the pit of a fruit, like a peach pit or apricot pit, plum pit. This
The
wine is
aroma
a tour de force,
This is.
if I say so.
You could just sniff it.
You never know this was a California wine in a billion years. In a billion years.
No, definitely not something that being in the heart of Napa Valley, something that we sample around here very often as well. So I thank you for importing some fabulous wines.
What was the inspiration behind this one?
The white. Well, as you know, in Chateauneuf-du-Pape they make a white and a red as well, and so these are the principal white grapes of Chateauneuf-du-Pape, Grenache Blanc and Roussanne. We are also introducing Pic Poule, and eventually I hope to plant Clairette as well.
We look forward to that. Questions coming in. What was the turning point that compelled you to go smaller and biodynamic?
Again, Dr. Freud, a lot of different reasons. Bonnie Doon had gotten so large and out of control and scary. We had become the 28th largest winery in the United States.
Oh my goodness.
I think maybe even bigger than this winery, or who knows, but big enough at least. And so we were actually competing with like people who knew what they were doing, like real wine companies.
That's scary.
It was very scary. So the winery was in very leveraged, borrowed a lot of money, so the financial part was scary. But the other part was that just my heart wasn't in it anymore, or it hadn't been for quite some time. I didn't really want to make a lot of wine. I discovered biodynamic farming, and there was no way that such a large production could ever be biodynamic. And it was pretty industrial winemaking. It was pretty cookbook winemaking. The wines were nice. They were friendly. They were fruity. They were soft, delicious, but they really lacked individuality. And I don't think you can ever make distinctive wines on such a large scale. I think it's impossible. So
Just kind of lose touch with
yeah,
kind of hands-on nature.
well, there's just too many variables to control, and the grapes themselves are essentially become kind of commodities.
I love the color yellow on the wine bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I think it's very cheerful and beautiful. And they're definitely catching the suggestion of the beeswax in the notes. And intriguing nose, tree fruit, melon, mineral, honey, nice texture too.
Nice notes, yeah.
These are nice notes. In a Fabulous World asks, what is your favorite wine trend and what trend would you want to forget?
Oh dear.
That's funny.
Oh dear. Oh, favorite wine trend. Riesling, of course, the reemergence of Riesling as a viable category. I thought it would never happen in my lifetime.
It's happening.
Go figure. Oddly enough, Grenache. This is almost apocalyptic. That people are buying Grenache these days.
What do you think is kind of driving that?
I have no
No
idea.
reason.
No reason.
Just time.
Sometimes there's just no reason for
There's no
anything.
reason.
As far as insidious trends, the most insidious, if I say, well, am I allowed 2 insidious trends?
Go for it.
Okay.
There's no rules.
Most insidious trend, sweet red wines. This is an abomination. People need to be punished.
They need to stop.
Spanked. They need to be stopped.
Public spankings.
Public spankings. Pilloried. And then, I shouldn't be saying this in the middle of the Napa Valley, but wines in general in California that are too darn alcoholic. They're just over the top. It's very difficult to find wines under 14% in this particular valley.
This is true.
Or actually almost anywhere else in California. The wines are just over the top. And it's become normative. I mean, people think if wine isn't 14 or 15 or God knows anymore, it's not proper wine. This is madness.
It couldn't be further from the truth, yeah. I agree with that, absolutely. I have to say, there's so much Cabernet. It's so nice to see different varietals coming out. It's exciting. It's exciting as a consumer to try different things and be like, wow, there's other wines out there. Who knew? It's not Merlot, it's not Cab, it's not Chard. And we visited the Finger Lakes a few years ago. And sadly, there was a lot of Pinot, Cabernet Franc. And it was like, okay, none of it was really quite that good, to be honest. And then we started finding wines that I had never heard of. varietals I'd never heard of. One-
Ricatsutelli.
Right, and it was like, what are these? Himrod actually was one that came to mind that was completely different. I'm like, I'll try that because the Pinot is terrible, and we'll go with something I don't know. And those were the most fabulous for their region. Turns out a lot of those were Native American varietals that
Cool.
thrive in their climate, and it's like, do more of that. That was good. So it's definitely exciting and adventurous, to be able to say, well, what's this? Let's try that, and getting a bit more variety in the different varietals that are out there in the wine collections. We do have some questions. It may be Gen Y. They're a more adventurous wine consumer. They might be. Oh, they are too funny. But it is. I love it when you can go to a region. I think Calaveras has done very good on how they said, we're not Napa. We don't need to be the Cabernet and Chardonnay house here. And then they've really tapped into their own varietals, the Tempranos, the Grenache. And just they're beautiful. And they're just amazing blends, standalone, production. And as a region, they've really tapped into what does well there. And I think a lot of regions could learn from that. And it's what lets them shine through. It's like, this is what's special about us and why I want to come visit you. I mean, if you could get the same thing everywhere, what's the point?
Correct.
There's no intrigue in that. I thought the trend was slowly going the other way. So I can see where that comment's coming from. We've been through a few seminars recently where they're starting, there's a lot of talk about de-alking wine and bringing it down. But I think right now we're so far into the high alcohol wines, it's going to take a while to kind of.
Well, the point is, though, if you have to manipulate the wines so much to get,
what are you doing?
Something is not right. I mean, the best wines are wines that don't require a lot of manipulation, that are more, without makeup, if you will, sans maquillage.
And so you start with a quality, grape, quality.
Well,
product.
quality grape, but quality. What does quality mean? Quality means the congruity of the variety and the rootstock to the place where it's grown. It belongs there. If it
makes sense for where it's at.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that for sure. If you're saying if you have to manipulate it to the point that maybe you're trying to pull characteristics that weren't there, what it's really in your glass at that point?
Well, it becomes a synthetic product or essentially a commodity, and we winemakers in California and the New World in general have become so accustomed to manipulating wines that we're not even conscious. We put in tannin and acidity and there's all sorts of things.
Well, I've been to some of the trade shows. Because I'm more consumer side, but I've been to some of the trade shows, and the products that are there were kind of startling. I mean, there are things in wine you probably really don't want to know.
Well, you do want to know.
You want to know, but
you really don't.
But it's kind of shocking. It's like, wait a second, you have to do what to get what?
Yeah.
I mean, I was a little frightened. Then I was taking note of who was going to their booth.
Oh, sure.
I'm like, no more for you.
Yes.
But this is truly delightful. I thank you so much for sharing your
my
wines.
pleasure. My pleasure.
You can find the wines at bonniedudevineyard.com. Better yet, go visit them, try them in person, meet the staff, meet the team, meet the people behind the wine. You can make your appointment on CellarPass.com. You can find out more by going to the website, pick up the phone, go to the winery.
Call the winery, call us up, or come and visit.
Come and visit. That's the best way. We always say it's the best way. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
And I hope you have a fabulous trip home.
Thank you.
You're welcome.